right, so good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome into another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. I know we've got some new faces in the crowd today, so if you are new to us, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Usually we do about 50 programs every single month, but this February, as always, we go way above and beyond because Sunday, which was the Super Bowl, was also an even more important day, the International Day for Women in STEM. And so every single February since our inception, we kick out all the dudes and spend the entire month celebrating and showcasing the most amazing women in science and exploration on planet Earth. Now, this week in particular, we are so thrilled as we're partnering with the amazing folks at If Then She Can. This is an incredible initiative of the Lida Hill Philanthropies, again, celebrating the coolest women in science and exploration on the planet. 125 ambassadors that they have featured in all manner of amazing science communication programs over the last few years. And we wanted to partner with them with 16 of their best and brightest for this series today and over this week. So we just wrapped up with Dr. Tay talking about neuroscience. Yesterday, we were standing on a cliffside with a snake and talking about archaeology, and we're giving you something completely different with today's broadcast. We are joined live by Gracie Eermi, who's come on once before, to talk about coding for a better world. When I was a kid, coding was something that people did somewhere else that was far away. And you kids are growing up in a time where coding is a part of your everyday education. Some of you have probably coded all sorts of things by now, which is very exciting. So we're going to dive in with a little bit of a story of how you can turn coding into a career to improve the planet, whether you're picking it up for the first time, whether you're a pro. Gracie's career has taken her as a machine learning scientist to do just that. So I'm very excited to bring her into the broadcast and take us away. Gracie, welcome back, and thanks for being here today.
Hi, Jesse. Thanks for having me.
I know you've got a lot to share with us, so if you want to dive right in, you are good to go. And then I can't wait for a big, long Q&A at the end with everybody.
Perfect. Sounds good. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I'm excited to be back. As Jesse said, I'm going to talk to you about my career. I work in coding. I'm a computer scientist, and I have gotten to apply computer science to all sorts of cool problems and problems that I'm really passionate about. So I'm excited to talk to you about that today. So I like to talk about what I like outside of work as well. I think it's so important to show that scientists, we're regular people. We have lives and families and, dogs. And so outside of work, I really love to knit and craft, just like all kinds of things. So I made this sweater that I'm wearing in this picture based on this sweater from Mabel in Gravity Falls. She has a whole wardrobe of amazing sweaters. I have a bunch of siblings, and I love to hang out with them. They're some of my best friends up in those top two pictures there. I have a little dog named Margot. She's very energetic and fun and keeps me, alert and and moving. And then I live in Northwest Washington State with my fiance, Danny. So we love to get outside and hike and camp in our area whenever we can. So just to kind of start out, I want to talk about what a computer scientist does and also what we don't do. So before I became a computer scientist, I didn't know really anything about computer science. And I thought that if you work in technology, you have to be an expert on every different type of technology, and you have to know about everything and how to fix everything and just be a technology wizard. But to my relief, you don't actually have to know everything about every type of technology to be a computer scientist. Our work is more about how do we write code, which is instructions that a computer can follow, so that we can get computers to do cool things. So a lot of my time is spent, at my computer typing, working with my teammates, and trying to get computers to do cool stuff by writing code. What we don't have to worry about, luckily, because I feel pretty not very confident in my skills on this side of things. I don't have to worry about fixing computers. I don't have to worry about tinkering with the parts and making the physical computer do things. So that part we leave to computer engineers and hardware engineers and people who are experts on that side of things. Computer science is all about coding. And like I kind of alluded to, so when I was growing up, I didn't actually know anything about coding or computer science. My high school didn't have any coding classes, and I just really did not think of myself as a tech person. I didn't play a lot of video games, and I didn't play on the computer a lot, and phones weren't as big of a thing, so it wasn't like I was really interacting with technology all day, every day like we are now. And I just never considered technology careers for myself. I didn't know anyone who worked in tech, and those careers just seemed so foreign and like mysterious to me. So that's not what I was thinking about. But I really loved a lot of other subjects in school, and I loved sports and band. I was in band all through school. And I really wanted to find a career someday where I felt like I was making a positive difference in the world. So then when I got to college, I went to Western Washington University, up really close to Canada, actually. So I was, right next door, in Bellingham, Washington. And at that point, I had had a lot of really good math and physics teachers and science teachers in high school and middle school. And they really inspired me and encouraged me to think about majoring in math or physics in college. And so that's what I went in thinking I was going to study. And then because of those interests, I was accepted to this program that was trying to get more women into math and computer science. So I had to take my first coding class, and I was 18 years old. So if you've done any coding at all, you're like light years ahead of where I was when I was 18. And that I was really, really scared to take that class because I still thought, like, I'm not a technology person. I don't know how to fix my printer when it breaks. Like, how could I become a computer scientist? But those were all just like, misconceptions that I had that I really try to like dispel now. And so I was really scared to take that class. I didn't have a very open mind. I thought I was going to hate it, but that professor of that class was really amazing. He's in this picture here, Dr. Perry Fasano. He talked a lot about how computer science is really just a tool that we can use like any other tool to help solve problems that we care about. And you can apply it to really any other interest that you have and combine it with that interest and be able to do really cool stuff and just kind of expand the impact that you can have in that space. So that really got me interested. And so I took some more computer science classes and eventually decided to major in it. So I got a bachelor's degree in computer science. And then I also decided to get a master's degree as well, because I wasn't really ready to go out into the world yet. So I stuck around, got another degree. And it was I'm so happy that I found computer science and that I gave it a chance. And I'm especially happy because now I get to do really cool stuff with computer science. So my first job out of school was combining computer science with wildlife conservation. So this was an idea that I didn't know about. I didn't know it existed. Even when I was going through school and like wrapping up, I had no idea that there were people who were building technology to help support wildlife conservation. And I got to work on some really, really cool stuff on this team. One of my favorite projects I got to work on had to do with killer whales. So specifically the southern resident population of killer whales. And they are one of the critically endangered populations of killer whales. They kind of live in my backyard. So they live in the Salish Sea and the Puget Sound for a lot of the year. And there's only about 75 of them left. And we got to work with this scientist, Dr. Holly Fernbach, another amazing woman in STEM. And she had been studying these whales for many, many years and taking pictures with a drone, just like this one. So pictures from above. And from these pictures, she can do basically a health checkup of each whale just from an image. So how her work worked before we started working with her was that she would take all these pictures, go out and fly the drone, take like thousands of pictures. And then she would have to go back to her lab and look through every single one and find the ones where the whales were really flat and able to be measured. And then she would draw these very precise measurements on the images to be able to figure out how healthy is that whale, kind of measure where they are now and compare that to previous times when they've seen them. So it's a very kind of long and manual, tedious process that she would have to go to get these health metrics and be able to share them with policymakers and the general public so that we can have a better idea of how the whales are doing. So my team and I got to work really closely with her, learn all about her work, and then try to build her a computer program that would more automatically do some of these parts, the really tedious parts of this process. So we were able to build her something that would go through and find the best images of the whales and basically try to estimate where those really precise measurements should be placed so that she wouldn't have to do all of that. It could also identify the different whales in the images, which was pretty cool. And yeah, basically just really help speed up her work so that she wouldn't have to spend quite so much time doing all this really tedious stuff, and she could spend her time doing the really important stuff that we needed her to be doing, and just move a little bit faster. So that was a really, really cool project that I loved working on. And I also got to work on some stuff with sound and listening to environments and ecosystems. You can tell a lot about the health of an ecosystem just by how it sounds and what sounds you're hearing. So we were working primarily with underwater environments, and even underwater, like things like fish make a lot of sounds if you're listening closely. Whales make a ton of sound. Dolphins whistle. There's like all kinds of sounds that you can hear underwater. And actually sound travels further underwater than it does in air. So you can hear so many cool things. And what we were specifically listening for was bottlenose dolphins and their whistles. So again, we're working with a really cool woman in STEM, Dr. Layla Sayegh. She had been studying these dolphins in Florida for many, many years. I think like they had over 30 years of data and dolphin whistles that they had recorded. So she had all of these recordings, and there was so much recorded that they couldn't even like get enough people to listen to them. There was no way they could get through all the recordings that they had collected. So again, we came in there and we were like, how can we make your work, easier and more efficient? And we built her a tool that could automatically listen to these dolphin recordings and pick up the whistles. When a whistle would happen, it would flag it and then try to identify the dolphin based on their whistle, which was actually what Layla's main research was about. She had figured out that dolphins make unique whistles called their signature whistles, and you can tell them apart. They're unique to all the other dolphins. So the idea was that if we could automatically detect and identify these whistles, we could. They had all of these recording stations set up around Sarasota Bay, and if we could identify them, then we could, have these microphones out there listening. And when they would hear certain dolphins, they could like alert someone, oh, this dolphin is in this area, and just kind of generally learn more about the behavior and the traveling patterns of the dolphins. So that was also really fun, really cool stuff to be working on. And more recently, I've kind of shifted into a new type of technology, but still related to the environment. And so now I work at a company called Impact Observatory, and we are using artificial intelligence and satellite images to be able to monitor the Earth, and specifically the land, and how is land changing over time. So this is a sample of one of our maps. This is 2022, I believe, over Washington State. And just kind of giving you a big picture of what these maps kind of look like. So the different colors mean different things. Green is trees, red is built area, like buildings and roads and neighborhoods and things. Orange is crops. That tan color, we call it rangeland, which is just kind of grass and shrubs and like open sort of land. Blue is water. So we're trying to look at categories like that, things that are on the land and covering the land, and how is that changing over time. And we're really building these maps so that superheroes that are working in governments and nonprofits and industry, people who are working to save the planet, we want to be able to give them these maps so that they can see how our area is changing over time that they are trying to protect, and maybe even help them like understand what are the risks in those areas and how can we anticipate changes that might happen in the future. And so this is closer to the area I actually live in, like kind of a more zoomed in version. And you can see this is 2017 versus 2022. So you can kind of look at those while I talk and see what changes can you spot between those 2 years. And you can imagine if you were someone who, managed a really big area of land, maybe like a national park or, a forest or something, you can't go out and walk that land every day or even every month, probably. And so it's hard to tell sometimes when things change, and maybe it's an unexpected change that you would want to know happened. So we can use maps like these and be able to enable people with a lot of data that they can use to be able to tell when a change does occur, what should they do about it, should they send someone out, but just to be able to give them these sort of bird's eye views of the areas that they are trying to protect so that they can, take action when something needs to happen. So the changes that you're seeing here are, there's a lot more red in this 2022 map than there was in 2017. And that's a normal change that we're seeing in a lot of places. Red, again, is built area, so houses and neighborhoods and roads. And as time goes on, more people move to places and neighborhoods expand and, towns expand. So that's kind of what we're seeing in this area, which we're seeing in a lot of places. So how do we build these maps? Again, there's a lot of computer science in there. There's some artificial intelligence. And what we start with, though, are satellite images. So these are 2 satellite images from 2 different dates that are actually pretty close to each other, both August of last year. This is in Hawaii. So you can think about what might have happened between these 2 images. You can tell there's a lot more like dark areas in these images, or in this image on the right from August 18th. So you can think about what might have happened there. And I'll tell you in just a second, or you can guess in the chat. But it was actually a big fire. If you remember last year, the Lahaina fire that happened in Hawaii, it was a really devastating fire. But these are the types of events that we can see in satellite images, and kind of see the expanse of damage that might have happened. So using these satellite images, we can train a computer to be able to do tedious things that we don't want to do. So that's where I think artificial intelligence is kind of the most useful at this point, is to get it to do things automatically that people don't really want to spend their time doing. So in the case of these maps, we want to basically look at the entire globe and be able to tell at every single point on the globe what type of land is on the ground. And so we get computers and AI to do that for us, which saves us a lot of time, because it would take us a long time to look at pictures of the entire globe and manually draw like what was on the ground. So to get computers to do that, we do have to train them. And we do that by showing computers and AI a lot of examples of what we want it to learn to do. So we did have to get humans to generate a number of samples of what we wanted the AI to learn to do. So these are some of those human-drawn samples, where they looked at a satellite image and then drew in what type of land was in these sample images. So we have a couple thousand of these that we show to the computer to be like, okay, look at this satellite image. What do you think is in this image? And then we use the expert labels to be able to correct what the computer is doing as it's practicing this task over and over. And once we've gotten it to practice enough, then we can show it new images it's never seen before, and it can really quickly tell us what's on the ground in those snapshots. So by doing this, we can then have the AI look at pictures of the entire globe and tell us what's on the ground. We can generate these global maps in a matter of weeks, versus if people were trying to label the entire globe, it would take years. And as you know, having these maps is really helpful, but kind of the next level is being able to alert people when something does change. So we're working towards that now as well. So this is an example in Cambodia. In 2021 and then 2023. And then this pink is where we've automatically detected that change has occurred. So this was like a deforestation event. So we can also find things like areas affected by natural disasters, deforestation, sea level rise, human expansion, changes in agriculture, and much more. We're always thinking of new ways. How can we use these maps, and what else can we what other data can we give to people to help them protect the area that they manage? Okay, so I want to get to your questions, but I also just want to kind of as a last note, talk about how, and just remind you that, computer science really is being used more and more in every field all the time. We feel that in our daily lives, that technology is more and more prevalent in our daily lives. But it can also really be this tool that we use to make impact in all these areas. So really, no matter what interests you have, you can combine those with computer science. And I feel like computer science just kind of opens the door to working in any field that you're interested in. So all of these ones, but also any others that you can think of, really. So I'll leave you with this question. What problem do you want to solve? I think, you all have such amazing ideas, and the world needs to hear what you have to say. And computer science, can really just be another tool in your toolbox as you go out and, create solutions to the problems that we have in this world. And I hope we get to work on some cool stuff together someday. So thanks for listening.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Gracie, for sharing all that. That was a wicked whistle-stop tour of some of the cool stuff you've had the chance to get up to. And as you said, we're going to dive in with questions in a minute. YouTubers, if you want to share in the chat, please do. GMS, our St. Marguerite crew, I'm coming to you guys live in just a second. But I'll begin with, is there any way that our students, whatever their age may be, that they can participate in some of these citizen science AI training efforts? Like, is there anything that you can guide them to? Or I don't know. I'll leave it to you to.
Yeah, that's a great question. One of my favorite resources for that, it's called Zooniverse.
Yes.
And they have, I'll type it in the chat. Yeah, thank you. So they have a ton of projects in, again, all different types of fields. Like there's some history ones, there's a lot of conservation ones. There's like more like biology ones. And you can basically go on there and look at data that scientists have collected and be able to label that data, whatever they might need. So there might be like satellite images, for instance, and maybe you have to label all the houses that you see in the images, or maybe there's camera trap images that were like a camera that was sort of stationed in the forest, and they want you to look through the pictures and flag when you see different types of animals and what types of animals you might be seeing. There might be like text that is from old documents that they've taken pictures of that they need someone to transcribe and write out what text you see. So there's all types of projects like that. And scientists desperately need, help from the public to be able to get through all that data and make it usable.
It is my favorite. I wanted to lead into the question while not saying the word Zooniverse to give you, it is the best citizen science platform ever. Like if you're keen on space or animals or literature or like anything, there's options for you to do some cool stuff. So honestly, when you're done at zooniverse.org, I'll make sure all our classes have that. Lots of opportunity to dive in with this and sort of get your feet wet in the field. So thank you for that, Gracie. Our GMS crew, I'm going to head to Kelowna. If you guys want to unmute your mic, I'll come to you guys for a question. Staying with our St. Marguerite crew. Again, you guys can flick on your microphones anytime, but let's come in check in. Hey, GMS, welcome in, guys. If you have any questions, I'll come live. And just come on up to the microphone. Perfect. Let's see. Hey.
Hello. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Okay. We have a very small class, but they're feeling very motivated and inspired by what we've heard, and I don't think they have any questions. Do we have any questions? No.
That is totally fine. I know it's kind of shy in a small class. If you do think of anything, you can always type in the chat, and we'll take it from there. But nice to see you guys and welcome in. Our St. Marguerite crew, again, if you guys want to unmute your mic, I can come to you live. Otherwise, you can share in the private chat, but I'll say hello. Hi, guys. Welcome in.
Hi.
Do you have any questions for us?
Can you hear me, by the way?
Oh, yeah, perfectly.
Hey, Nick, go ahead.
Are you able to solve world hunger?
Ooh, no
That's
pressure.
a great question. There are definitely people working on how can we use technology, to better distribute resources and all kinds of things. But I mean, I think you should work on that too. Once you go to school, but there are definitely people working on that. It doesn't have to all fall onto you, but there are a lot of creative ways we can use technology to help in that space.
Well, you highlighted again, looking at these satellite images and sort of understanding land changes over time. And one of the coolest things, I think, in the world of science is that we have so many satellites pointing their gaze back down towards the Earth. And so we can really easily chart droughts, insect impacts, fires, like you mentioned. All those things are really integral for understanding and trying to combat world hunger, because if we don't know where we need to allocate our resources to help bring back places that might have been impacted or where to share food, like those are fundamental things in the fight against hunger. So I'm glad your minds go there, St. Marguerite. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Gracie, I'm so curious for our students. We got a bunch of grade 6s, grade 7s today. How would a coder get their start? Is there anything that you can recommend? Is there a process or an activity or anything that you can lead into if you're young and wanted to end up like you?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many good resources out there to like learn online for free. I would say, code.org has a lot of good, fun coding activities and all different types of levels you can kind of move through as your interest grows. I use Python, the Python coding language, primarily in my work. And I also think that Python is a really good first language to learn. It's sort of a little bit more like language based and like almost like you're writing sentences as you're coding in Python. And so it's a really good one to learn, and also really, really useful in the world. Like so many professionals are using it. So it's a really good one to start with.
So I'm going to harp on this for just a second, because for someone who's coming in and has no idea what you're talking about with coding languages, explain a little bit about what this process is like. Like, are these as different as French from English from Spanish? Are they fairly linked in some way? What do you find that people use? Like you talked about Python being used in lots of applications. What else is out there, and what does that learning actually look like?
Yeah. Oh, thanks for diving in deeper. These are important things. So yeah, coding languages, a lot of them are based in English. So, I actually don't know as much about like other, spoken languages, written languages, and how that sort of translates, or if you have to know English to then write in Python. But anyway, Python is English based at least. And so, you're writing basically like, it's almost like a recipe that you're writing that you want the computer to follow. So you're like, step 1, do this, if this happens, then do this other thing. So you're using like English words like if and then, and like, while this thing is occurring, do these things. So you're really giving it like step-by-step instructions of what you want the computer to do. It's definitely like when you see movies, if someone is like hacking into a system, there's like streams of numbers flying by. Like it's nothing like that, I would say. Usually coding is a lot more slow. You're thinking critically, like solving problems step by step. You're definitely not like having to type at lightning speed. And so, yeah, it is really like if I, showed you some code, you would be able to recognize words that were in there. And if I explained it a little bit to you, you would understand like the idea of what was occurring. So it's definitely not like completely outside of the realm of anything you've ever seen before. It's like, you have to know a little bit to start, and then you understand. Yeah.
I'm so glad you dispelled this myth that coding is things flying on a screen at rapid fire speed. You've got to decode the bomb. Mission Impossible has thrown me way astray. There's always a coder in all movies now that are like high stakes things, and they try and build up the drama. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
GMS, I will come back to you if you do have a question. Just let me know in the chat. Our St. Marguerite crew, I'm going to come to you live. More fun to have you on camera. So if you want to ask that question, you put in the chat. We'll come back in and go for it. Hey.
Matthew, go ahead.
What other stuff have you done with animals?
Yeah, talking about some of the whales.
Yeah. So outside of the whales and the dolphins, I've done some cool stuff with elephants. So the organization I used to work for, they did something called the Great Elephant Census, where they estimated how many elephants were left, African elephants across all of Africa. And they did that using a lot of images taken from small planes that were flying in the sky in these like very strategic ways to try to get a really good estimate of how many elephants were left without having to fly over every single square inch of the entire continent of Africa. So they did that. And then building on that, we were trying to do these more frequent updates of trying to estimate elephant populations. So I used a lot of again, these pictures taken from airplanes of elephants down below. And again, using AI to automatically find and count elephants in these many thousands of images. So another cool use of computer science and AI. I did some stuff with sharks too, trying to estimate shark populations using underwater cameras. So it was all, yeah, it was super fun stuff. A lot of cool animals.
We have a lot of biologists coming on in this series and just in general, and so many of them talk about the fact that they have AI, machine learning things that are used to sort of augment their work. You talked about sort of these cameras that are put on trails to see and assess wildlife. Those are like millions of hours of footage, which is really tedious for a person to watch through. And you've watched for 100 hours and then one person goes by with their dog. It's kind of stressful. So if you can teach artificial intelligence to assess that and be like, oh, there's a bear, every time there's a bear, it saves you a lot of trouble and work. And we're seeing that increasingly sort of all around the world. So I'm really glad we got that question. Gracie, when people talk about AI, if they go on the news, if you go on social media, it's AI is either going to save the world or we're all going to die. Can you talk about this for a minute? Should we be scared of AI from your perspective as someone who gets to work with us every day, or what's the deal?
Yeah, that is another great question. So I think that AI, so the ways that I'm using it, I think I'm a huge fan of. Again, like I think if we're using AI to automate some of these really tedious things that we don't want to do anyway, I think that's an amazing use of AI. Where I think we need to exercise caution is in thinking about the impact of the AI that we do build. I think that there needs to be a lot of thought that goes into like, are people going to be negatively impacted by this? Are there use cases for this AI that maybe we didn't intend, but like, how could a bad guy, use what we built in a way that would harm people or harm, animals or something? So I think that there are a lot of people actually already thinking about the ethics of AI and how do we put guardrails around everything that we're building. I think everyone in the AI field needs to be thinking about that. And then there are specialized people thinking about that as well. So yeah, I think it's a matter of really thinking critically about everything we build. Does this need to exist? And, yeah, as a community, and then as people in the public too, you can have a say on that type of thing. Yeah.
That's a very nuanced answer. And I will add, because it's something that we touch upon in quite a few of our broadcasts, just take with a grain of salt anything that you may hear about in the news. There's always the motivations behind why people are saying certain things, good or bad, about a new technology. And as Gracie mentioned, there are lots of ways that we can sort of go into the future with this, in positive ways, in negative ways. There are people working on this, but basically don't believe the hype necessarily when it comes to either side of the equation. So I'm really glad we covered that. GMS Crew Cologne, I'm going to head to you guys, and then time flies and you're having fun. We are almost done the end of the broadcast, but I'm going to head to you for a question, and then we'll wrap up not long after that. Hey, guys.
Oh, no. Is there a way, is there a website or a program that can teach AI how it works and how it was created?
Ooh, interesting.
That's a great question. I need to brush up on that a little bit. I know that code.org had a big focus on teaching AI this year and maybe even last year as well. So they probably have some pretty good resources there to kind of understand the basics of AI. But that's a really good question. I need to look into that more. What are some sort of more educational, easy to understand resources? Yeah.
I'm going to go on a limb, and I don't know this offhand. I'm going to try and find this and share it with our classes after. SciShow and Crash Course are two fantastic YouTube channels for learning about pretty much everything that's topical in the world of science and exploration. So I'm going to guess that there's probably something there that might answer your question. And if I find that, I'll share it with your teacher momentarily when we're done this broadcast. So great question, guys. Gracie, before we wrap up, is there any last message you want to share about coding, about your own career, anything to leave our kids with to keep the learning going as a springboard now that we're done?
Yeah, I would just say, coding is one of those things that can be really intimidating to learn. And even intimidating, for me now, as if I have to learn a new concept or a new tool, sometimes I also still get intimidated and feel like, oh, this is too hard. Maybe I won't be able to learn this thing. But I think something really important to remember as you're learning to code, and also as you're learning any new thing, is just because it's hard doesn't mean that you're bad at it. And I think like persevering through those hard moments is a skill that you have to practice. And so I would just say, keep pushing and keep learning, even if it feels challenging. That means that it's worthwhile to learn. So I hope that you'll push through and, add coding to your toolbox.
Gracie, there's no better message to wrap up with than that. We had talked about the exact same thing in a neuroscience presentation like 45 minutes ago with Dr. Tay. So again, good things are challenging. They're hard. They take a long time. If you want to end up doing something really amazing with your life, sometimes it takes a lot of school. And that sounds really daunting when you're in grade 6 or 7. But at the end of that, you're really young and you get to work with the most amazing people doing some of the coolest projects on planet Earth. So it's not for everybody, but if you are keen on it, don't let that challenge be something that holds you back. And that's been a abiding message in our entire If Then series. So do check that out. If you get the chance to hang out with any of our other amazing speakers over the next few days, we'd love to have you. If Then She Can has so much to discover, both on Gracie and the other 124 ambassadors that they featured. So keep the learning going. And Gracie, as we did to wrap up our first broadcast together, we're going to bring in our classes to say a big thank you and farewell. So GMS, St. Marguerite, anyone joining on YouTube, if you want to yell out at home as well, thank you so much for joining, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you so much.